My phone almost slipped from my trembling hands when my brother Ethan's voice cracked over the line. Rachel, that's impossible. I just saw Daniel, your husband, boarding my flight. And he wasn't alone. He was with another woman. My knees buckled. Daniel had told me he was working late, finishing an urgent project at the office. But here was my own brother, an airline pilot, swearing he saw him, laughing with a woman in first class. Before I could even process the betrayal, before I could ask Ethan more questions, I heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps creeping up behind me in my own house. That's the moment everything I thought I knew about my marriage began to unravel. The sound of footsteps made me whirl around, my heart hammering against my ribs. There stood Mrs. Peterson, our elderly neighbor who had a spare key for emergencies, holding a casserole dish. Rachel, dear, I knocked, but you seemed occupied on the phone. I brought over some dinner since Daniel mentioned you'd be alone tonight. Her kind smile faltered when she saw my face. Goodness, you're white as a sheet. I forced a smile, thanked her, and somehow managed to get her out the door before collapsing onto the couch. The irony wasn't lost on me. Daniel had been thoughtful enough to make sure I had dinner while he was supposedly working late. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of building what I believed was an unshakable foundation in our Scottsdale home. Daniel Whitmore, charming, successful financial consultant, beloved by everyone in our suburban community. And me, Rachel Whitmore, 8th grade. English teacher who'd fallen head over heels for his steady confidence and warm brown eyes. I stared at our wedding photo on the mantel, his arms around my waist, my head thrown back in laughter against the backdrop of Camelback Mountain. We looked so happy, so certain. This is ridiculous, I muttered, reaching for my phone. Daniel would explain. There had to be a misunderstanding. But my fingers hovered over his name. What exactly would I ask? Hey, honey, are you really at work or are you on my brother's flight with another woman? The absurdity of the situation hit me like a physical blow. I called Ethan back instead. Are you absolutely sure it was him? I asked the moment he answered. Rachel. His voice was gentle but firm. I've known Daniel for 5 years. I watched him give a toast at your wedding. It was him. And the woman? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Dark hair, designer clothes. They were close. Holding hands. The room seemed to tilt. Where was the flight headed? Dallas. I'm sorry, Rach. I have to go. We're about to take off. I'll call when we land. After we hung up, I sat motionless, trying to make sense of it all. Dallas. Daniel had no business in Dallas. No clients, no conferences, nothing he'd ever mentioned. I walked to our home office and opened his laptop. It was password protected, of course, but I knew the code. His mother's birthday followed by mine. Or at least that had been the password for years. Invalid password. I tried again. Nothing. Something cold settled in my stomach. When had he changed it? What else had changed while I wasn't looking? I opened his desk drawer and rifled through his papers. Nothing unusual at first. Bank statements, investment reports, receipts. Then I found it. A hotel reservation confirmation for tonight in Dallas. 1 room, king-sized bed, the Westwood Hotel. And there, at the bottom of the drawer, a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a heart. Charm. Definitely not mine, and definitely not something Daniel had ever given me. The gift tag read simply, "For my Bella, always. Bella." The name sliced through me like a blade. I sank into his chair, clutching the evidence of his betrayal. Memory suddenly sharpened into painful clarity. The late nights, the business dinners, the weekends away for conferences. How long had I been blind to this? How many times had he held me, kissed me goodbye, all while planning rendezvous with someone else? My phone rang, startling me. Daniel's smiling face appeared on the screen. Hey, babe, he said when I answered, his voice casual, affectionate even. Just checking in. How's your evening going? The normality of his tone made my blood boil. Fine, I managed. Just having a quiet night. How's, the project coming along? Almost done. I heard background noise, voices, announcements. Should be home by tomorrow afternoon. Good, I said, clutching the bracelet box until my knuckles turned white. I can't wait to hear all about it. You okay? You sound strange. Just tired, I lied, just as he was lying to me. Get back to work. Love you. Love you too, he replied without hesitation. I hung up and stared at the phone. How easily the lies flowed from both of us now. I walked to our bedroom, opened his closet, and began a methodical search. In the inside pocket of his least-worn suit, I found 3 more hotel receipts, all from weekends when he claimed to be working, and a photograph. Daniel with his arm around a stunning woman with cascading dark hair, the Dallas skyline behind. Them. She was beautiful. The kind of effortless, polished beauty that made me, with my practical teacher's wardrobe and simple blonde bob, feel instantly inadequate. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd shared for 3 years, where we'd made love and whispered dreams and planned for children someday. Now it felt contaminated. I picked up my phone and opened the airline app. There was still one last flight to Dallas tonight. Before I could second-guess myself, I booked a ticket. The airport terminal hummed with late-night travelers as I wheeled my hastily packed overnight bag through security. I'd never done anything like this before, impulsively chasing my husband across state lines to catch him in a lie. I barely recognized myself. I kept checking my phone, half expecting Daniel to somehow sense what I was doing, but there were no calls, no texts, just silence and the crushing weight of what I'd discovered. As I waited at the gate, I called my best friend, Melissa. "You're doing what?" she gasped when I explained where I was. "I need to see it with my own eyes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to know the truth." "Rachel, honey, you already know the truth. The, receipts? The bracelet? What more proof do you need?" "I need to see his face when he realizes he can't lie anymore," I whispered. "I've spent years looking at that face, Mel. I thought I knew every expression, every thought behind those eyes. I need to see what I missed." She sighed. "Text me when you land. And Rachel, be careful." On the plane, I stared out the window as Arizona's lights faded. Beneath me. 6 years ago, I'd moved here from Boston for a fresh start after a bad breakup. I'd been so certain Scottsdale would be the place where I'd build my forever. Now I felt untethered, floating above my life, watching it crack apart from a distance. I thought about Ethan. My brother had always been my protector, even with an ocean between us when he flew international routes. When our parents died, Mom from cancer when I was in college, Dad from a heart attack 3 years later, Ethan had been my rock. He'd walked me down the aisle at my wedding to Daniel, giving me away with tears in his eyes. "He'll take care of you now," Ethan had said at the reception, clapping Daniel on the shoulder. "But I'll always be watching out for you, Rach." He'd kept that promise today. The flight attendant offered me a drink, and I accepted a small bottle of wine, hoping it might calm my nerves. As the alcohol warmed my blood, I found myself thinking about all the small signs I'd overlooked. Daniel's phone, always face down on tables. His sudden interest in fitness last year, buying expensive workout clothes and spending hours at the gym. The new cologne he'd started wearing, one I hadn't picked out for him. His increasing disinterest in our weekend traditions. Farmers market on Saturdays, hiking on Sundays. I'd explained it all away. He was busy, stressed, building his client base. I was the understanding wife who didn't nag, who gave him space, who trusted him completely. What a fool I'd been. As the plane began its descent into Dallas, I pulled out my phone and opened the hotel. Confirmation I'd found. The Westwood Hotel. I typed the address into my rideshare app, already queuing it up for when we landed. My hands were shaking as I gathered my belongings and deplaned. The Dallas airport was still busy despite the late hour, business people and families navigating the bright terminals with purpose. I found a bathroom and checked my appearance in the mirror. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman who'd discovered her husband's betrayal and flown across state lines in the middle of the night. My eyes were red-rimmed, my hair disheveled. I splashed water on my face, reapplied some lipstick, and straightened my shoulders. If I was going to confront them, I wouldn't do it looking defeated. The rideshare driver was mercifully silent during the 20-minute drive to the hotel. I watched the Dallas skyline come into view, all gleaming towers and bright lights against the night sky. Daniel had always said he disliked big cities, preferred our quieter life in Scottsdale. Another lie. The Westwood Hotel was elegant and understated, with a discreet entrance and uniformed doormen. My heart pounded as I walked through the revolving doors into the marble-floored lobby. A massive chandelier cast soft light over plush seating areas where a few late-night guests lingered over drinks. I approached the front desk, where a polite young woman greeted me with a practiced smile. "Welcome to the Westwood. Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" I hesitated, then took a chance. "Actually, I'm joining my husband, Daniel Whitmore. He checked in earlier today." She typed on her computer, then nodded. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore is in room 714. Would you like a key?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, please." "May I see some ID, Mrs. Whitmore?" I handed over my driver's license, holding my breath. She glanced at it, smiled, and returned it with a key card. Elevator is to your right. Enjoy your stay. Just like that. So easy to gain access to the room where my husband was sleeping with another woman. In the elevator, I stared at my distorted reflection in the polished brass doors. What exactly was I planning to do? Burst in and make a scene? Calmly confront them? Stand in silence until they noticed me? I had no plan, only a desperate need for truth. The 7th floor was silent, the thick carpeting muffling my footsteps as I followed the signs to room 714. I stood outside the doctor for what felt like an eternity, the key card clutched in my sweating palm. From inside, I heard laughter, Daniel's familiar baritone chuckle, and a woman's melodic response. I slid the key into the lock. The light turned green. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The door swung open silently. I stepped into the dimly lit suite, my heartbeat drowning out all other sounds. The entryway opened to a spacious living area where Daniel and a woman sat on a cream-colored couch, champagne glasses in hand, their backs to me. An open bottle chilled in an ice bucket on the coffee table. The woman was stunning, sleek dark hair cascading down her back, slim figure draped in a burgundy silk dress. Her manicured hand rested casually on Daniel's thigh as they laughed at something on her phone. Working late, Daniel? My voice came out steadier than I expected. They both whirled around. Daniel's face drained of color, his expression cycling rapidly through shock, confusion, and finally, fear. The woman, Bella, I presumed, looked between us with widening eyes. Rachel? Daniel stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his champagne. How did you? Your brother, the woman said. Suddenly, her perfectly arched eyebrows lifting in recognition. You're Ethan's sister. I stared at her, momentarily thrown. You know my brother? Daniel mentioned him, the airline pilot. She set down her glass with deliberate calm. I'm Bella Cruz. She extended her hand as if we were meeting at a dinner party rather than in the middle of my husband's infidelity. I ignored it. Rachel, I can explain, Daniel started, running his hand through his hair, the nervous gesture I'd once found endearing. This isn't what it looks like. I laughed, a hollow sound that didn't belong to me. Really? Because it looks exactly like my husband is in a hotel suite with another woman while he told me he was working late. Daniel stepped toward me, his hands raised placatingly. It's a business meeting. Bella is a potential investor. Do all your investors get silver bracelets with love notes? I interrupted. Do they all hold your hand and drink champagne in hotel rooms at midnight? His face hardened. You went through my things? And you've been going through her, I shot back, nodding toward Bella, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. I think I should leave you two alone, she murmured, reaching for an elegant clutch on the table. No, I said sharply. You're part of this. How long has it been going on? Bella looked at Daniel, clearly uncertain whether to answer. His silence told me everything. I'll ask again, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. How? Long? 8 months? She finally answered, lifting her chin slightly. But he was going to tell you. Was he? I turned to Daniel, tears finally threatening. Were you? He sank back onto the couch, defeated. I was trying to find the right time. The right time, I repeated. Between business trips that weren't business and late nights that weren't at the office. How thoughtful of you. Bella shifted uncomfortably. Daniel said your marriage was essentially over. That you were just going through the, motions. My gaze snapped to her. And you believed him? That's the oldest line in the book. I turned back to Daniel. This morning you kissed me goodbye. Last week we talked about starting a family. Which part of that was going through the motions? Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. Rachel, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Save it, I spat. I don't need your apologies. I need the truth. For once. He looked up then, a flicker of defiance crossing his face. The truth? Fine. I wasn't happy, Rachel. I haven't been for a long time. You were so content with our little life. The same routines, the same conversations, planning for a future that felt like a trap. His words hit like physical blows. And instead of talking to me about it, you chose to cheat? I met Bella at a conference in Chicago. She's ambitious, exciting. She makes me feel alive. Bella had the grace to look uncomfortable. I should really go. No, Daniel said firmly, reaching for her hand. We're not doing anything wrong. Rachel and I were over long before you. The casual cruelty of his revision of our history stole my breath. Is that what you've been telling yourself to sleep at night? That we were over? When exactly was I informed of this? He had no answer. I looked around the suite, at the champagne, at their overnight bags neatly placed by the bedroom door, at the trail of deception that had led me here. Something inside me shifted. The shock and pain were still there, but rising above them was a strange, clear certainty. You know what's funny? I said quietly. I flew all the way, here thinking I needed to see your face when you couldn't lie anymore. I thought I needed that moment to believe what was happening. But standing here now, I realize I don't need anything from you anymore. I slipped my wedding ring off my finger and placed it on the table. Consider yourself free from our little life. I hope she's worth it. I turned to leave, but Bella's voice stopped me. He told me you wouldn't fight for him, she said, almost apologetically, that you'd just quietly accept it. I looked back at her, this woman who thought she knew me through Daniel's lies. I'm not fighting for him. I'm walking away with my dignity. There's a difference. In the hallway, the door closing behind me, I finally let the tears come. I leaned against the wall, shaking with silent sobs, the reality of what had just happened crashing over me. My marriage was over. The future I'd planned was gone. The man I'd loved didn't exist. Or worse, had existed once and had chosen to become someone else without telling me. I made it to the elevator before my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Where are you staying tonight? Not, I'm sorry, not let's talk. Just logistics. As if I were inconvenience to be managed. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked through the lobby with my head high, past the sympathetic glance of the receptionist who had given me the key card, out into the warm Dallas night. I had no plan, no idea what came next. But for the first time in hours, I could breathe. The night air was thick with humidity as I wandered away from the Westwood, pulling my small suitcase behind me. Downtown Dallas glittered around me, indifferent to my collapsing world. I found a small park with benches and sat down, trying to collect my thoughts. My phone buzzed again. Ethan this time. Just landed. Everything okay? I stared at the message, unsure how to condense the last few hours into a text. Instead, I called him. Rachel? He answered immediately, concern evident in his voice. What's happening? I'm in Dallas, I said, my voice breaking. I saw them together. You're... what? How did you get here so fast? There was muffled noise in the background as he moved to a quieter location. Where are you now? Some park near the Westwood Hotel. I don't even know where I'm going to sleep tonight. Stay right there, he said firmly. I'm coming to get you. 45 minutes later, Ethan's tall figure appeared at the park entrance. He spotted me and hurried over, his pilot's uniform still crisp despite the late hour. Without a word, he sat beside me and pulled me into a hug. I broke down completely then, sobbing against his shoulder as if I were still the little sister he used to protect from playground bullies. I've got you, he murmured, stroking my hair. It's going to be okay. How? I choked out. How is anything ever going to be okay again? He had no answer, just held me until the sobs subsided. I have a room at the Crew Hotel, he finally said. You'll stay with me tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure it all out. In Ethan's hotel room, I sat cross-legged on one of the two queen beds, clutching a cup of tea he'd ordered from room service. I'd told him everything. The phone call, the evidence I'd found, the confrontation at the Westwood. I should have told you my suspicions earlier, Ethan said, pacing the room. Last month I thought I saw them at O'Hare, but I couldn't be sure from a distance. I didn't want to cause trouble if I was wrong. It's not your fault, I said dully. I should have seen it myself. He sat across, from me. Rachel, look at me. I reluctantly raised my eyes to his. This is not your fault. Daniel made choices. Terrible, selfish choices. But he said I made him unhappy, that our life was boring. And instead of talking to you about it like a grown man, he cheated. That's on him, not you. I nodded, though the words did little to ease the hollow feeling in my chest. Who is she? Ethan asked. After a moment, do you know anything about her? Bella Cruz. She seemed to know who you were, actually. I frowned, remembering. She said Daniel had mentioned you. A strange expression crossed Ethan's face. Wait, Bella Cruz? Dark hair, about 5'7". Looks like she stepped out of a fashion magazine. You know her? He ran a hand through his hair. She's a regular on my Dallas-Chicago route. First class, always. Some kind of real estate developer or investor. I've exchanged pleasantries with her maybe a dozen times. The coincidence was too bizarre to process. So Daniel's mistress just happens to fly with my brother? It's not that unusual. There are only so many direct flights between those cities, and first class is small. He hesitated. Rachel, there's something else. The few times I've spoken with her, she's always been with the same man, older guy, distinguished looking. They seemed close. What are you saying? I don't know. Maybe nothing, but it feels off. I set down my tea, my brain struggling to process this new information. You think she's involved with someone else too? I can't be sure. But you deserve the whole truth, whatever it is. I laughed, bitterly. The whole truth? I'm not sure I can handle any more truths tonight. Ethan checked his watch. Get some sleep. My layover is 48 hours. I'm here if you need anything. But sleep eluded me. I lay awake in the unfamiliar hotel room, replaying every moment of my marriage, searching for the exact point where everything had begun to unravel. Had there been signs from the beginning? Had I chosen to ignore red flags because I was so desperate for the perfect life I thought we were building? Around dawn, I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. Something Ethan had said kept nagging at me. I searched for Bella Cruz Dallas real estate and was immediately rewarded with dozens of results. Bella Cruz was apparently a major player in Dallas luxury development, young, ambitious, and successful. Her company, Cruz Investments, specialized in high-end commercial properties. There were photos of her at charity galas, groundbreaking ceremonies, business award dinners, and in many of them, she was accompanied by the same man, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with a commanding presence. The captions identified him as Robert Hargrove, CEO of Hargrove Financial Group. I searched for Hargrove and found articles describing him as one of Dallas's most powerful financial figures, married for 30 years to socialite Catherine Hargrove, 3 adult children, multiple homes, philanthropic foundation. And somehow, this man was connected to the woman my husband was sleeping with. I dug deeper, cross-referencing names and companies. There it was. Daniel's firm had recently been, acquired by a larger financial services corporation. The parent company? Hargrove Financial Group. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Daniel wasn't just having an affair. He was sleeping with the girlfriend or mistress of his boss's boss. And I had walked right into the middle of it. As the sun rose over Dallas, illuminating a city I'd never wanted to visit, I realized just how little I knew about the man I'd married. Who exactly was Daniel Whitmore? And what else was he hiding? Ethan found me at the small desk in his hotel room, surrounded by printed articles and notes, my eyes red from both lack of sleep and revelations. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, setting down 2 coffee cups from the hotel cafe. More like I've uncovered a soap opera, I replied, gesturing to my research. Daniel isn't just cheating on me, he's entangled in something much bigger. I explained my discoveries about Bella Cruz and Robert Hargrove, watching Ethan's expression shift from confusion to concern. This is getting complicated, he said, studying the photo of Hargrove I'd printed. If this man is as powerful as you say, Daniel's playing a dangerous game. Which makes me wonder, is the affair even about attraction, or is it about climbing the corporate ladder? The question had haunted me all morning, adding another layer of betrayal to Daniel's infidelity. Ethan shook his head. Does it really matter? Either way, he betrayed you. It matters to me, I said quietly. I need to understand what was real and what wasn't. My phone buzzed. Another text from Daniel. We need to talk. Where are you? After 6 earlier messages I'd ignored, his tone had shifted from apologetic to demanding. I silenced the phone without responding. What's your plan? Ethan asked, settling into the chair opposite me. I don't have one, I admitted. I can't face going back to Scottsdale yet. To our house, our neighbors, the life we built. Everyone thinks we're the perfect couple. Stay here with me. I'm in Dallas until tomorrow night. I nodded gratefully, then hesitated. There's something else I want to do first. Something I need to see for myself. An hour later, I stood across the street from the gleaming tower that housed Cruz Investments. The building was all glass and chrome, reflecting the bright Texas sun. I dressed carefully in clothes from my hastily packed bag, a simple black dress and flats that could pass for business attire. This is a bad idea, Ethan muttered beside me, looking uncomfortable in civilian clothes on what should have been his rest day. I just want to see, I insisted. I won't confront anyone, I promise. The lobby was an intimidating expanse of marble and modern art. A security guard nodded as we approached the directory. Cruz Investments, 12th floor, I murmured, scanning the listing. We rode the elevator in silence. The doors opened onto a reception area where a young woman greeted us with a professional smile. "Welcome to Cruz Investments. Do you have an appointment?" "Actually, I was hoping to speak with Ms. Cruz about potential investment opportunities," I improvised. "I'm in town briefly from Arizona. I'm afraid Ms. Cruz is in a meeting this morning. Would you like to leave your information? Someone from our team could contact you." Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened behind us. Bella Cruz stepped out, immaculate in a tailored white pantsuit, talking rapidly on her phone. She stopped abruptly when she saw me, her professionally composed features faltering for just an instant. "I'll call you back," she said into her phone, ending the call. "Rachel, this is unexpected." "Hello, Bella." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. She recovered quickly, gesturing toward a hallway. "Why don't we speak privately?" She glanced at Ethan. "Both of you." Her office was spacious and tastefully decorated, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Dallas. She closed the door behind us and leaned against her desk, arms crossed defensively. "If you're here to make a scene, I'm here for the truth," I interrupted. "All of it." She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "What exactly do you want to know?" "Your relationship with Robert Hargrove. How Daniel fits into it. Why my husband is sleeping with a woman who's clearly involved with his boss's boss." Surprise flickered across her face. "You've done your research." "I'm a teacher. It's what we do." A small, reluctant smile touched her lips. "Robert and I have a complicated relationship. We're business partners primarily. The rest is occasional and discreet." "And Daniel?" "That wasn't planned." She looked almost apologetic. "We met at a corporate event 6 months ago. He was charming, eager to impress. It started as a convenient distraction for both of us." "Did he know about Hargrove?" "Not at first. By the time he figured it out, we were already involved. He saw advantages to the situation. The calculated coldness of it stunned me." "Advantages?" "Career advancement, access, information." She shrugged elegantly. "The financial world runs on relationships, Rachel. Daniel is ambitious. And what does Hargrove think of you sleeping with one of his employees?" Something hard flashed in her eyes. "What Robert doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, our arrangement allows for flexibility." Ethan, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Does Daniel understand what he's involved in? The risks?" Bella's gaze shifted to him, recognition dawning. "The pilot brother. Now I see the family resemblance." She sighed. "Daniel understands exactly what he's doing. He's not some innocent being manipulated." "No," I said bitterly. "Just a liar and a cheat." "For what it's worth," Bella said, her voice softening slightly. "He did talk about you, sometimes with genuine affection." "How comforting," I replied, the sarcasm sharp enough to cut. She moved. Behind her desk, a subtle shift to regain control of the conversation. "I assume you're leaving him?" "I haven't decided what I'm doing," I said, though we all knew it was a lie. There was no going back. "If you're concerned about finances, don't be. Daniel will be generous in a settlement. He'll want this to go away quietly." Her presumption that everything could be reduced to a transaction ignited my anger. "This isn't about money, it's about 3 years of my life built on lies." Bella looked genuinely perplexed. "Then what do you want from this conversation?" "I wanted to see the woman my husband chose over me, to understand what was worth destroying our marriage for." I stood straighter. "Now I see it wasn't about you at all. It was about him. His greed, his ambition, his selfishness." Something like respect flickered in her eyes. "You're stronger than he described you. He never really knew me." I turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Does Hargrove know Daniel is married?" "Of course. Everyone at the company knows." "But they don't know you're sleeping with him." Bella's expression cooled. "That's correct." "Interesting power dynamic," Ethan observed. As we walked out, I felt strangely lighter. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but seeing Bella in her element, calculating, unapologetic, entirely focused on her own interests, had clarified something for me. Daniel hadn't left me for love. He'd left me for opportunity, for advancement, for a shinier version of success than our quiet life in Scottsdale offered. "You okay?" Ethan asked as we exited the building. "No," I answered honestly, "but I think I will be." My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Daniel but Melissa from back home. "Any updates? We're all worried about you." I realized with a start that I'd need to face another reality soon, returning to Scottsdale, to friends and colleagues who had no idea my marriage had imploded. The thought was overwhelming. One step at a time, Ethan said gently, as if reading my thoughts. Let's get some lunch. Everything else can wait. The call came at 3:17 that afternoon. I nearly ignored it, assuming it was Daniel again, but the caller ID showed an unfamiliar Dallas number. Hello? Mrs. Whitmore? A woman's crisp, professional voice. This is Amanda Peterson from Hargrove Financial Group. Mr. Hargrove would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience. The blood drained from my face. Excuse me? Mr. Hargrove has requested a brief meeting. Today, if possible. A car can be sent to your location. I caught Ethan's questioning gaze across the hotel room. May I ask what this is regarding? Mr. Hargrove prefers to discuss that in person. Her tone made it clear this wasn't really a request. After getting the details, I hung up and explained the situation to Ethan. You can't seriously be considering going, he said incredulously. I want to hear what he has to say. I was already reaching for my shoes. This might be my only chance to understand the full picture. It could be a trap. What if Daniel set this up? Then I'll walk out. I met his concerned gaze. I need this, Ethan. I need to face all of it before I can move forward. Reluctantly, he agreed, but insisted on accompanying me to Hargrove's office building. Text me every 30 minutes, he instructed as we parted in the lobby. If I don't hear from you, I'm coming up. The executive floor of Hargrove Financial was a study in understated wealth, dark woods, plush carpeting, and discreet lighting. Amanda Peterson, a poised woman in eye. Her 40s led me to an imposing set of double doors. Mr. Hargrove is expecting you, she said, opening them to reveal a corner office with panoramic views of Dallas. Robert Hargrove rose from behind a massive desk. He was taller than he appeared in photos, his silver hair perfectly groomed, his custom suit impeccable. He extended his hand with practiced charm. Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for coming on such short notice. His handshake was firm, his blue eyes shrewd and assessing. He gestured to a seating area by the windows where a tea service waited. I imagine you're wondering why I've asked you here, he said once we were seated. Word travels quickly in certain circles. I understand you visited Cruise Investments this morning. I tensed. News travels fast. It does when you have the right connections. He poured tea with the precision of someone accustomed to controlling every detail. I believe we have a mutual concern. If you're referring to my husband's affair with Miss Cruz, I'm not sure that's any of your business. A thin smile. On the contrary, when personal indiscretions threaten business relationships, it becomes very much my business. So this is damage. Control. Call it a mutual exchange of information. He handed me a cup of tea. You discovered something today about Ms. Cruz and myself. I'm curious what you intend to do with that information. The implied threat was subtle but clear. I have no interest in your relationship with Bella Cruz, I said carefully. My concern is my husband's betrayal. Understandable. He leaned back, studying, me. Daniel has been with our firm for just over a year. Ambitious, perhaps overly so. Did you know about his relationship with Bella? His expression hardened imperceptibly. Not until recently. I don't appreciate complications, Mrs. Whitmore. Neither do I, Mr. Hargrove, yet here we are. He chuckled unexpectedly. Indeed, here we are. He set down his cup. I'll be direct. Daniel's position at Hargrove Financial has become untenable. I don't tolerate disloyalty in any form. The realization dawned slowly. You're firing him. Let's say his employment status is under review. The outcome depends partly on how discreetly the situation is resolved. And I factor into this how, exactly? A messy divorce, public accusations, these create unwelcome attention. I prefer clean endings. I laughed without humor. You want me to quietly disappear so you can handle your own complication without scandal? Put simply, yes. He reached for a folder on the coffee table. I've taken the liberty of preparing some documents you might find helpful. A generous divorce settlement already signed by Daniel, a confidentiality agreement, and a cashier's check to cover immediate expenses. I stared at the folder without touching it. You've been busy. I believe in efficiency. His tone was matter of fact. This offers you financial security without a protracted legal battle. Daniel keeps his reputation, if not his job. Everyone moves forward. And what about Bella? My relationship with Ms. Cruz is being reevaluated as well. I thought of Daniel, who had betrayed our marriage, for a career opportunity that was now crumbling. Of Bella, whose carefully managed double life was unraveling. of this powerful man who believed he could control everyone's lives with money and intimidation. Mr. Hargrove, I said carefully, I appreciate your efficiency, but I'll be handling my divorce my own way, with my own lawyer. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I strongly advise you to reconsider. I'm sure you do, but unlike my husband, I can't be bought or intimidated. He studied me with new interest. Daniel clearly underestimated you. It seems to be a pattern with him. I stood, leaving the folder untouched. I have no interest in creating a public scandal, Mr. Hargrove. My dignity means more to me than revenge, but I won't sign away my right to handle this situation as I see fit. He rose as well, his expression unreadable. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Whitmore. Probably not my first, and certainly not my last, but it's my mistake to make. I moved toward the door. Thank you for the tea. In the elevator, my hands finally began to shake. I just refused one of the most powerful men in Dallas. Yet alongside the fear was something unexpected, a fierce pride. For the first time since Ethan's phone call, I felt like myself again. Ethan was waiting exactly where I'd left him, pacing anxiously. What happened? You didn't text. I just turned down a small fortune and possibly made an enemy, I said, a slightly hysterical laugh escaping me. But I think I found something I lost, my backbone. As we walked out into the late afternoon sun, my phone rang. Daniel's number. This time, I answered. Rachel, where are you? Hargrove said you just left his office. He sounded panicked. Goodbye, Daniel, I said calmly, and ended the call. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. There would be lawyers and paperwork and painful conversations. But for the first time, I could see beyond the betrayal to a life rebuilt on my own terms. 2 days after my confrontation with Hargrove, I returned to Scottsdale with Ethan. The familiar desert landscape outside the plane window felt like another lifetime, a place where I'd once been Rachel Whitmore, contented wife, dedicated teacher, woman who believed in the solidity of her marriage. Now I was someone else entirely. You sure you're ready for this? Ethan asked as we pulled into the driveway of what had been my marital home. No, I admitted, but it needs to be done. The house looked exactly as I'd left it. The terracotta planters of succulents on the porch, the cheerful welcome mat, the wind chimes Daniel had complained about, but I'd kept anyway. Only now, everything felt like props on a stage set, artifacts from a life that had never been entirely real. I'd called Melissa ahead of time, and she was waiting inside, having used her spare key to prepare for my arrival. She rushed forward the moment I entered, enveloping me in a tight hug. Oh, Rachel, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. Over cups of tea at the kitchen island, the same spot where I'd received Ethan's fateful call, I filled her in on everything that had happened in Dallas. What happens now? She asked when I'd finished. I've contacted a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. The words still felt strange on my tongue. And I'm putting the house on the market. You're selling? Melissa looked around at the home I'd so lovingly decorated. Are you sure? I can't stay here, Mel. Every corner holds a memory that's been tainted. I sighed. Besides, Daniel and I bought it together. I want a clean break. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Maybe back east for a while to be closer to Ethan when he's not flying. I've already spoken to my principal about taking a leave of absence for the rest of the semester. We began the painful process of sorting through the house. Clothes into suitcases, photos into boxes, a life being dismantled methodically, piece by piece. I was in our home, office, gathering personal documents, when I heard the front door open, heavy footsteps in the entryway, then Daniel's voice calling my name. Rachel, are you home? I froze, heart pounding. Melissa appeared in the doorway, eyes wide with alarm. He's here, she mouthed. It's okay, I whispered. I knew this was coming. I walked into the living room where Daniel stood looking disheveled and desperate. His normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated. Unshaven face, rumpled clothes, shadows under his eyes. You're back, he said, relief washing over his features. I've been calling and texting for days. I needed time to process, I said calmly. How's Dallas? His expression darkened. You've ruined everything. I ruined everything? I repeated incredulously. That's interesting, considering you're the one who had an affair. It wasn't just an affair, Rachel. It was an opportunity. Bella had connections, influence. She was helping my career. The cold calculation in his voice struck me anew. So you're not even pretending it was about love anymore. Don't be naive. Of course I cared about you, but our life here was so limited. Bella offered more. And now? His shoulders slumped. Now it's all gone to hell. Hargrove put me on administrative leave pending an ethics review. Bella won't take my calls. The board is meeting next week to discuss my future with the company. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. This man who had gambled everything on a calculated risk and lost spectacularly. But then I remembered the months of lies, the casual cruelty of his betrayal. I'm sorry for your career troubles, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. But they're not my concern anymore. He stepped closer, desperation clouding his features. Rachel, we can fix this. Come back to Dallas with me. Talk to Hargrove. Tell him we're working things out. I stared at him, stunned by his audacity. You want me to lie to save your job? It wouldn't have to be a lie. We could try again. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But we built a life together. That has to count for something. It counted for nothing when you were with Bella, I said quietly. I've already contacted a divorce attorney. There's paperwork on the kitchen counter. My terms. His face hardened. So that's it? 3 years of marriage and you're just walking away? You walked away first, Daniel. I'm just making it official. Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. Melissa answered it, then stepped aside to reveal 2 unexpected visitors, Robert Hargrove and a distinguished older woman who could only be his wife, Catherine. Daniel paled. Mr. Hargrove, Save it, Whitmore, Hargrove said coldly. We're not here for you. He turned to me, his imperious manner somewhat softened. Mrs. Whitmore, forgive the intrusion. My wife insisted on meeting you. Catherine Hargrove stepped forward, elegant in a tailored pantsuit, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a chignon. Ms. Thompson, she said, using my maiden name with deliberate emphasis. I wanted to personally apologize for the distress my husband's associate has caused you. The realization dawned slowly. She knew everything. About Bella, about Daniel, about all of it. That's not necessary, Mrs. Hargrove, I said, finding my voice. On the contrary, her voice was steel-wrapped in silk. When powerful men and ambitious young people forget their moral compass, it's often people like you and me who pay the price. I wanted you to know that there are consequences for everyone involved. She glanced pointedly at Daniel, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. Then she handed me a business card. My personal attorney. She specializes in divorce cases. Call her. She's expecting to hear from you. The Hargroves left as abruptly as they had arrived, leaving behind a stunned silence. Daniel looked shell-shocked, as if the full impact of his choices was only now becoming clear. I think you should leave, I told him quietly. Rachel. Now, Daniel. We'll communicate through the lawyers from here on. After he left, Melissa wrapped her arm around my shoulders. What just happened? I think that was Catherine Hargrove's way of choosing sides, I said, turning the elegant business card over in my hands. And maybe her own form of revenge. Later that evening, as Ethan helped me carry boxes to his car, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from my school principal, a response to my request for leave. But instead of approving my absence, she was offering me something unexpected, a chance to lead a special literature program at a sister school in Boston for the upcoming year. A fresh start in the city where I'd grown up, thousands of miles from the wreckage of my marriage. What is it? Ethan asked, noting my expression. I showed him the email, a smile slowly spreading across my face. I think it's the universe showing me the way forward. As the desert sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, I stood in the driveway of the house I'd once thought would be my forever home. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork, logistics, and goodbyes. But tonight, for the first time in days, I felt something like hope. Fragile, tentative, but real. 6 months later, I stood at the window of my small apartment in Boston's Back Bay, watching snow dust the historic brownstones across the street. The winter light cast a pearly glow over the city, so different from Arizona's relentless sunshine. My phone chimed with a text from Ethan. Landing in 30? Still picking me up? I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. My brother had a 3-day layover in Boston, a rare treat we'd both been looking forward to. So much had changed since that night when his call had shattered my world. The divorce was finalized with surprising speed, thanks in part to Catherine Hargrove's formidable attorney. Daniel, facing professional disgrace at Hargrove Financial, had agreed to my terms without protest. A fair division of assets and a clean break. The house in Scottsdale had sold quickly, providing the financial cushion I needed for this new chapter. My teaching position in Boston had evolved into something unexpectedly fulfilling, working with high school students on a special literary journal that was gaining attention in educational circles. I grabbed my coat and headed out to meet Ethan at the airport. As I drove through the familiar streets of my hometown, I reflected on the strange circularity of life, how I'd left Boston years ago after a heartbreak, only to return after an even deeper one, somehow stronger for it all. Ethan was waiting at arrivals, his tall figure easy to spot in his pilot's uniform. He enveloped me in a bear hug. "Look at you," he said, holding me at arm's length. "You look good, Rach. Really good." "I feel good," I admitted. "Most days, anyway." Over dinner at our favorite childhood restaurant, I updated him on the latest developments. "Daniel's moved to Chicago," I told him. "Apparently, he found a position at a smaller firm there. Started over." "And Bella?" I shrugged. "Still in Dallas from what I hear. Though not with Hargrove anymore. Catherine made sure of that." Ethan shook his head. "Hell hath no fury like a wealthy woman with connections. How about you? How's life at 30,000 feet?" "Same as always." He hesitated. "Actually, that's not entirely true. I've been offered a management position at Logan. Training new pilots, less time in the air. You'd be based in Boston?" I couldn't hide my excitement. "That's wonderful. I haven't accepted yet. Wanted to see what you thought first." "Since when do you need my approval?" He smiled. "Since my little sister became the strongest person I know." The following day, Ethan and I visited our parents' graves in the small cemetery outside the city. We stood side by side in the crisp winter air, laying flowers against the headstones. "They'd be proud of you," Ethan said quietly. "For getting divorced?" I joked, but the humor fell flat. "For facing the truth with dignity. For rebuilding your life on your own terms." He squeezed my shoulder. "That takes real courage, Rach." On our way back to the city, Ethan suggested stopping at a small bookshop cafe we'd both loved growing up. The place had barely changed, shelves crammed with books, the scent of coffee and cinnamon, mismatched chairs around well-worn tables. As I waited for our drinks, I browsed the local authors section. My fingers traced the spines of the books, remembering how I'd once dreamed of being a writer before settling into the comfort and security of teaching. Rachel Thompson? I turned to find myself face to face with Michael Brennan, my college boyfriend, the one I'd left Boston to forget after our painful breakup 8 years ago. "Michael," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "It's been a long time." He looked good, hair a bit grayer at the temples, laugh lines around his eyes, but still with that same warm smile that had once made my heart race. "I heard you were back in town," he said. "Teaching at Emerson Academy? News travels fast." He laughed. "Small literary circles. I'm on the board there." We chatted easily, years of awkwardness somehow dissolved by time and perspective. He was divorced, too, had a daughter now. Was running the small publishing company he'd always dreamed of starting. When Ethan joined us, he raised an eyebrow at Michael, remembering him from years ago. But there was no tension, only the comfortable reconnection of people whose lives had taken separate paths before converging again. Later, as Michael was leaving, he hesitated. "Would you like to get coffee sometime? Catch up properly?" 6 months ago, I would have said no reflexively, too wounded by Daniel's betrayal to consider opening up to anyone. But standing there, in the city where I'd begun and now begun again, I found myself nodding. I'd like that. That evening, Ethan and I walked along the Charles River, the city lights reflecting on the dark water. I told him about the encounter with Michael, about the tentative coffee plans. "Too soon?" I asked, suddenly uncertain. "There's no timeline for healing, Rach," he said gently. "Only what feels right to you." We stopped, looking out over the water toward the city skyline. So different from the desert vistas I'd grown accustomed to, yet somehow more like home than Scottsdale had ever been. "You know what's strange?" I mused. "If Ethan hadn't seen Daniel on that flight, if you hadn't called me that night, I might still be living in blissful ignorance. Would that have been better?" I considered the question seriously. "No," I finally said. "Living a lie isn't really living at all. I'd rather have this, the pain, the rebuilding, the uncertainty, because at least it's real." The next morning, as Ethan prepared to leave for his meeting at Logan Airport, he handed me a small package. "What's this?" I asked, unwrapping it to find a beautiful leather-bound journal. "For your new story," he said simply. "The one you're writing now." I hugged him tightly, overcome with gratitude for this brother who had always been my protector, my truth-teller, my constant in a world of variables. That evening, alone in my apartment, I opened the journal and began to write. Not about betrayal or loss, but about reinvention and possibility. About a woman who discovered that the end of one story was merely the beginning of another, more authentic one. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael, confirming our coffee date for the following week. I replied with a simple, "Looking forward to it," then returned to my writing. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent, covering the city in a blanket of pristine white. A clean slate, a fresh page. The betrayal that had brought me to my knees had also, unexpectedly, set me free. Daniel's deception had stripped away the comfortable illusions I'd been living with, forcing me to face difficult truths. But in that painful clarity, I'd found my way back to myself. Not the woman who had left Boston years ago, nor the wife who had settled for less than she deserved in Scottsdale, but someone new, someone stronger. The truth had indeed set me free, not in the moment of devastating revelation, but in the quiet aftermath of rebuilding that followed. In choosing dignity over revenge, authenticity over comfort, I had found a peace that no betrayal could ever again disturb. Sometimes the most profound journeys bring us right back to where we started, but as different people, seeing with new eyes, loving with wiser hearts, standing on firmer ground.